Sunday within the octave of Christmas, taken from St. Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 4. Brethren, as long as the heir is a child, he differeth nothing from a servant, though he be Lord of all, but is under tutors and governors until the time appointed by the Father. So we also, when we were children, were serving under the elements of the world. But when the fullness of the time has come, God sent his Son, made of a woman, made under the law, that he might redeem them who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption of sons. And because you are sons, God hath sent the Spirit of his Son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father. Therefore now he is not a servant, but a son, and if his son, an heir also through God. And then the Gospel, taking that according to St. Luke, chapter 2. At that time Joseph and Mary, the mother of Jesus, were wondering at those things which were spoken concerning him. And Simeon said, blessed them, and said to Mary his mother, Behold, the child is set for the fall and the rise, and for the resurrection of many in Israel, and for a sign which shall be contradicted. And thine own soul a sword shall pierce, that out of many hearts thoughts may be revealed. And there was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Aser. She was far advanced in years, and had lived with her husband 7 years from her virginity. And she was a widow and fourscore and 4 years, a widow until 4 years, who departed not from the temple, by fastings and prayers, serving night and day. Now she at the same hour, coming in, confessed to the Lord, and spoke of him to all that looked for the redemption of Israel. And after they had performed all the things according to the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their city Nazareth. And the child grew and waxed strong, full of wisdom, and grace of God was in him. Thus are the words of today's Holy Gospel. Son and Father, Son, Holy Ghost, amen. We're in this time in the octave of Christmas. But today, a few considerations on the feast. Would want to be today the feast of St. Thomas Becket, and the sermon consideration from St. John Chrysostom, the bishop. And that St. Thomas Becket said that when a boy had died just a few days before Thomas Becket, and this boy was raised from the dead by the prayer of St. Thomas Becket, and he came back to life, and he told the people, he said when he had died, he had gone up into heaven. And he saw the chairs of the 12 apostles, and that there was an empty chair nearby. And they said, what is this throne? And they said, this throne is waiting for a holy apostle and bishop who shall come from England, and he shall fill this throne. And he shall come quickly to this place. So that there are many holy bishops and saints in the church. But St. John Chrysostom says, one of the duties of us Catholics, St. John Chrysostom, the bishop speaking, says, we must remember to pray for the bishops. Because it is a most essential office. When you look at the duties of men in the church, the men in the world, the highest rank that exists in the world is that of bishop. A priest is another Christ. But a priest cannot make other Christs. And a priest is a captain in the army of God, but he is not a general. He cannot form armies. So he does not have the fullness of the priesthood. But the bishop, he is the highest man on earth because he has the power to make Christ present. And he is another Christ. And he also is supposed to be a general who forms an army to carry Christ into the world. And the most importantly, says St. John Chrysostom, he is a shepherd. And the shepherd feeds the sheep, the shepherd guards the sheep, the shepherd protects the sheep. And our Lord Jesus Christ even prophesied in the Old Testament. He said in the book of Ezekiel, I am the good shepherd. And when you remember the prophecy of Ezekiel, when he said, I am the good shepherd, it was in the chapter in which Ezekiel was speaking about all the shepherds of Israel. Because always, from the beginning of time, the leaders of the people of God, the leaders of the true church, are always called shepherds. Ever since that first shepherd, Abel, who was the most pleasing priest before God was killed, God associated being a shepherd to priesthood, and no priest is anything other than a shepherd, and the fullness of the priest is the good shepherd. Therefore, St. John Chrysostom says, what does the good shepherd do? And what does a shepherd worry about? What does a shepherd deal with? The shepherd must be concerned about wolves who are coming to devour the sheep. And the shepherd also must be concerned about the thief who is coming to steal. And he must be concerned also about the hireling. So there is a good shepherd. And the Lord says, I am the good shepherd, and I lay down my life for my sheep. The good shepherd loves his sheep. The good shepherd is not a hireling. The good shepherd recognizes the sheep are his own. But the Lord himself said, the hireling of the three, the wolf is like the devil himself, or the wicked heretics and the wicked men of the world who are out to directly destroy the church. These are the wolves. And so also our Lord said, beware of wolves in sheep's clothing. Some wolves actually become bishops, as St. John Chrysostom. Some become sheep, others become shepherds. So there are wolves that become shepherds, not only in the sheep's clothing, but they go into the shepherd's clothing, and they are there as heretics, like Arius, and like Eusebius, the wicked Eusebius, and like many others, heretic bishops, who are there to devour the sheep. The heretic bishop who is there to devour the sheep, to spread the evil of Arianism, of modernism, of Nestorianism, of monothelitism, of whatever heresy is prevalent at the time. And there are shepherds, there are bishops who become wolves. But then there is a second kind of shepherd, and he is a thief. And the thief is one who only becomes a shepherd for his personal gain. Judas became a shepherd because he was a thief. And Judas was interested only in his personal gain. Therefore, Judas became the shepherd that is the traitor. So there is a shepherd who comes in directly as an enemy of God. This shepherd is like unto the communists that infiltrated the Catholic Church in the last 100 years, AA 1025 and so on. These wicked men, who wicked when they entered the church, deceive themselves into priesthood, deceive themselves into episcopacy, got themselves in seats of dioceses. And this is one kind of wicked bishop, the wolf. But then there's a second kind of wicked bishop who is the thief. And this kind, he's not interested in being a heretic. He's not interested in heresy. He's interested in his own self-aggrandizement. He's interested in his own, he is simply there to steal the sheep. And these shepherds are spoken of by Ezekiel in chapter 34, when God says, woe to the shepherd that is a thief. For these shepherds have not fed their flock in the wintertime, but they have fed themselves. And these shepherds are thieves. This is the second kind of wicked shepherd. First kind is the actual heretic infiltrator of the church. The second kind is the thief. He doesn't care about heresy. There are thieves at every age in the church. So when the church is in its quote-unquote healthy age, and there are no heresies going around, most bishops are thieves, or many bishops are thieves. They become bishops because they want power. They become bishops because they want money, because they want to get their own way, and they want to build their own little kingdom. They are thieves. They are not supposed, they're there to serve the sheep, but they don't feed the sheep. Even if they are not heretics, even if they are not teaching grave errors and even practicing grave evil amongst the people, they're not living in purity. They're not teaching heresy, but they care only for themselves, and they are out to get the sheep to steal for their own benefit. They are like Judas, and every Judas ends up a traitor, and every Judas ends up crucifying Christ. And so many bishops in the church down 2,000 years are Judases. Judas was not a heretic. Judas never denied Christ directly, his teaching. He just wanted to make money. And he thought that I am just a small bishop. I am just a small man. If I take 30 pieces of silver for me, what does it bother? I take 30 pieces of silver. Nobody cares. There's so much more silver in the korbanon than my 30 pieces. No one will notice that it's gone. And besides, God is God. God is so powerful that he will escape. I've seen him escape so many times myself. So when I hand over Christ to the chief priests, they're going to send the soldiers up into the garden, and he's going to escape, as he escaped many times. I remember just a short time ago in Nazareth, they all came to surround him in the daytime. They came to surround Christ in the daytime, and he walked right through their midst. How are they going to capture him at night? I'll get 30 pieces of silver. Christ will escape in the night, and there'll be nothing worse that will happen. This is the thinking of the thief. The thief thinks only of himself, and the thief believes that if he acts as a thief, he will not bring about the crucifixion of Christ. He won't shed the blood of souls on the ground, and besides, God's love is so powerful that it won't change. He'll fix everything. And these are the scandalous bishops down the last 2,000 years. Bishops who are cold and cruel. Bishops who will know about their own dignity. Bishops who make sure they got everything that they need. Bishops who know all the rules and regulations only insofar as those rules and regulations benefit themselves. And these always are Judases. How does the wolf find a Judas amongst the friends of God? He gives him money. He looks for a thief. So very often when a young man wants to become a priest, the devil is often very happy because that young man, he likes money. That young man, he likes his own comfort more than he likes anything else. And one day that young man, I think I'll make him a bishop. And one day that young man is a bishop, he's going to have to be doing something for just 30 pieces of silver that he thinks won't cause that much harm. And he will bring about the destruction of souls. He will bring about the damnation of souls, and he'll also implement heresies. The majority of Arian bishops were actually not even heretics. They were just thieves. The world's Arian today. All right, I'll be Arian. And when the world became Catholic the next day, and the same bishops became Catholic, just like in the world today, there are 7,000 bishops. And if the Pope became Catholic tomorrow, many bishops would be unhappy because their life would become less comfortable, but they would obey. It's an Arian world. It's a modernist world. I'll be a modernist bishop. No problem. As long as I keep my rectory, as long as I keep my episcopal house, as long as I keep my power. Tell me the rules. Today the rules are women priests. No problem. You say it's okay with Rome? I'll do it. One of my duties before being expelled from the society was meeting bishops. Met over 30 bishops in Nova Scotia dioceses. And the majority of them told me, I asked them, what do you think? He says, I'll tell you what I think. I think whatever they say in Rome, that's what I think. Whatever the Pope says today, whatever he says tomorrow, that's what I think. I don't really care. It's above my pay grade. I don't care. If he says you're okay, you're okay. If he says you're excommunicated, you're excommunicated. I don't care. Just show me on a piece of paper what must be, what is acceptable, what isn't, and that's what I'll do. These are thieves. They don't care about the doctrine of Christ, but if they're told they have to preach it, they will. And they don't care about souls, but if they're going to get in trouble for not doing the minimum duties, they will. Thieves are the majority of bishops of all ages. St. John Chrysostom says, the vast majority of bishops go to hell. And not only do they go to hell, but their skulls are the pavings of the road, so that it's a smooth ride to hell. So St. John Chrysostom says, the road to hell is paved by the skulls of bishops. The majority of these bishops, they are not wolves. The majority of these bishops are not ravenous wolves. They're not infiltrators in the church. They're not communists. They're not Satanists. They're not heretics. They're just ordinary thieves. And all thieves turn into Judases. The whole world is going to be turned into Judas at the time of the Antichrist. In the time of the Antichrist, what's going to be done? You will not be able to buy or sell without the mark of the beast on your wrist or on your forehead. And if you don't have the mark of the beast, you will not be able to buy or sell. But in order to be able to get the mark of the beast, you have to worship the beast. And why are you going to do it? Because of money. So the majority of souls who follow the Antichrist, they will not be Satanists. They'll just be thieves. How bad is it to be a thief? The world today is filled with more thieves than any other time. That's why we're in such a materialistic society. I want you to have your cell phone. I want you to have your computer. I want you to have your TV. I want you to have your internet connection. I want you to have your entertainment at all times. And then one day, power goes out. Can you live without it? Can you live without your computer? Can you live without your iPad? I want my iPad back. I want my computer back. I want my rectory back. All right. Sign this paper that you're going to follow the Antichrist. Find a local priest who's being Catholic and turn him in. Turn your own neighbor and your brother and your sister and your wife and your husband and your children in and your parents. And we'll fulfill the prophecy that Christ says in the gospel towards the end times, that the enemies will be those of his own household. Why will you turn in your wife? Why will you turn in your husband? Why will you turn in your children and your parents? Because we are thieves. That's why. Because money is what we're after, and money is what we need, and money is the purpose of life. That's why the modern education is, you must raise a child, put him in a good university, make sure that he has a good education so he can get a good job so that he can make money for himself. Money is meant to be used, like all things, for the glory of God. And when it is not used for the glory of God, it's called stealing. Those who steal are called thieves. And so the second kind of bishop is the thief. He is also an example. He teaches others to be thieves. He is the head of the diocese. Even in our modern church today, the bishop is still the closest man to God, and he is an example to the world. And his example is the example of Wolf, that is of heretic and wicked man. These are the most evil bishops in the church. And the other are the example of Thief. They're just in it for the money, and they don't care about anything else. But then there's the third kind of bishop who also loses his soul, says St. John Chrysostom, and he is the hireling. The hireling is not a thief. He's not in it for the money, but he receives a paycheck. And he wants to do a good thing. He wants to be a good shepherd. He wants to take care of the sheep. The shepherd is out. The shepherd hires him to watch the sheep in his absence. And he watches the sheep, and he wants to do a good job. And he's being paid. He wants to do a good job. But he wants to do a good job as long as two things don't happen. He will do a good job so long as there's no wolf coming that will put him in danger. And he will do a good job so long as he gets a paycheck. He wants to do a good job with a paycheck. He wants to do a good job as long as there's no wolf threatening him. And this is the case of the conservative and good priest. The good bishop, the conservative bishop. There were 250 such conservative bishops who gathered together at the council and said, we will not tolerate this new church. I remember one priest telling me in 2012, in the Society of St. Pius X, says, we can't allow Bishop Fillet. We can't allow him to go modernist. We can't allow him to make a deal with Rome. We can't allow him to say that it's okay to be with Rome. We can't allow it. We can't allow it. We can't allow it. We will not allow it. What's going to happen if he doesn't? What's going to happen if the teachings do change? We can't allow it. What's going to happen if they do change? What's going to happen if you see a declaration come out from the general chapter in the next month that's not a good declaration? What's going to happen if they don't go the right way? We can't allow it to happen. What's going to happen? What are you going to do? I will stay because I have no place to go. But we can't let it happen. This is the hireling. The hireling says, I want things to be good. I want the sheep to be protected. I want to do the right thing. I want to teach the right thing. And then St. John Chrysostom says, the vast majority of bishops, they are damned. Because they're either the most wicked ones, which are called wolves, or they're the average ones, which are called thieves, or they're the good ones, which are called hirelings. And they do not save souls. Hence, throughout the church, there are so many enemies of God throughout all its history of the last 2,000 years. There are so many enemies of God, and especially in our age. And what is the reason? Because of the bishops. These are the chief reasons why. It is the chief reason why there is wickedness in the world. The priests are to blame. The faithful are to blame. And of course the Holy Father, the Pope himself, who is the chief of the bishops, is to blame. But the general blame is upon the bishops. The bishops of the church. These are the shepherds. Now what is the shepherd supposed to do? I am the good shepherd. First of all, I know mine, and mine know me. How is the knowledge between the shepherd and the sheep attained? The shepherd must speak a word, and his tongue must be recognized. The shepherd is the one who preaches the word of God, and he preaches the divine truth, and he speaks it exactly as Christ speaks it, because the shepherd is another Christ. I am the good shepherd, and I know mine, and mine know me. And also the shepherd, says St. Gregory the Great, the shepherd defends the flock. The shepherd increases the flock. That's what a good shepherd does. He does not only keep a sheep alive, he makes the sheep increase. The shepherd cannot be called a good shepherd, says St. Gregory the Great, if you meet him when he's 20 years old and he's got 50 sheep. You come back when he's 60 and he's got 50 sheep. He's a stinky shepherd. You come back when he's 60, where are the 50,000 sheep? And St. Gregory the Great also reminds, he says that remember the parable of the talents. Don't forget the parable of the talent. The man was given one, he was supposed to come back with 2. He buried it, and he is condemned. The man was given 10, he came back 5, he came back with 10. That man was said, because you've done well in small things, you will do well in the great. And the shepherd must always strive to increase the flock. He must always be trying to spread the flock. And this is done primarily by preaching the word of God, not only to the sheep, but also to the wolves, and also to the thieves, and also to those on the outside. The word of God is to be preached to all, and not only to those that are inside the faith. The shepherd must go out to the enemies. He must go out to those that do not care. He must also not only to protect his sheep, and this is the duty of the shepherd, and he is the voice of God. St. Thomas Becket did not want to be a bishop. He was a deacon. He worked in the court of the King Henry II. There was corruption in the court. He left the court. He went to be an archdeacon with the Bishop of London. And the bishop sent him back. He said, no, go back and help because you are wise. And the king liked Henry VII, St. Thomas Becket, so he became the Chancellor of England. And then after a while, the Bishop of Canterbury died, and the king wanted him to be the Bishop of Canterbury. He was forced to become the Bishop of Canterbury. When he became the Bishop of Canterbury, he sold all he had and gave to the poor. He gathered 13 poor beggars that would live inside the Chancery office, and every morning he got out of his bed and he washed the feet of the 13 beggars. He put on a hair shirt and wore a hair shirt every day. And he stood up for the rights of God. And he hid his hair shirt underneath his normal clothing that everyone else wore, so they wouldn't know that he was doing penance at all times. And the king said, I will not protect the rights of the church. And Thomas Becket said, no, I will protect the rights of the church, and I stand up against the king. And he stood up against the king, and he stood up against the king. And the king threatened to kill him. And finally he had to flee England. And then he had to be 7 years in exile. And then he was finally allowed to return to England. And he continued to stand up against the king. And he said he stand up for the rights of the church. And one day, he was also strict about the rules of the church. One day there was a simple priest who was saying the Mass of Blessed Virgin Mary every day. And the priest came and complained to him that he's not following the liturgical year. The priest is not following liturgy. He must not have studied hard in the seminaries. He's a negligent priest. So St. Thomas Becket said, well, I won't have a negligent priest in my diocese, so he suspended him. Meanwhile, his hair shirt had been damaged. He was going to try to sew it up that night and fix it. He put it under his bed. The Blessed Virgin Mary appeared and said to the priest, go to the bishop and tell the bishop, I know about your hair shirt. And the Blessed Virgin Mary fixed it. And you'll see a red silk ribbon by which she fixed it under your bed. And please lift the excommunication or the suspension of the priest for saying the Mass of the Blessed Virgin Mary every day. He was a simple priest. He didn't know how to follow the liturgical calendar. But he could say the Mass of the Blessed Virgin every day. And so St. Thomas Becket said, all right. And he lifted the suspension. And there's been a habit and custom in the church, elderly priests and sick priests, ever since that time, they have a missal. We have a missal called Te Quotantium. Big missal with big, huge Latin words. Big words so the blind priest can see it, or the almost blind priest can see it. And it is only the Mass of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Every other Mass he doesn't have to say, because he can't flip the book to the right Mass with the right name. So he says only the Mass of the Blessed Virgin every day. And that's the time of St. Thomas Becket. And then also, so in any case, that the St. Thomas Becket, when the day of his martyrdom, when he was killed during the office of Vespers, they said, they're going to come and kill you. And he said, this is the church of God. I shall not make it a castle. It is the time of Vespers. It is a time to praise the Lord. And it is a custom to keep the doors of the church open. Open the doors. And they opened the doors. And it was Sunday Vespers on the 29th of December. Exactly like today. Today is 29th of December and it's Sunday. So in 1170 AD, it was Sunday and the 29th of December. And in the afternoon, in the Cathedral of Canterbury, they locked the doors because they knew the soldiers of the king were coming to kill the St. Thomas. He said, open the doors. It is the time of Vespers. And then the soldiers came in, about 20 or 30 soldiers. They came in. And he said, I charge you before God and under the pain of anathema, you will not harm one of these people in the church. You will not harm one of my servers. As for me, I gladly bow my head before your sword. He didn't forbid them to kill himself. And he knelt down in front of them and he bowed his head forward. And they took their swords and they smashed his brains out. They crushed his brains completely and spread his blood on his brains all over the floor. And they killed him. And every single one of those soldiers went insane. They went nuts. They went sane. And they all died horrible deaths. And then Thomas Becket, they did his funeral 2 days later. And they began to sing the funeral. And they said, Requiem aeternam. And when they began to sing the Requiem, the angels came into the Canterbury Cathedral and they sang the Mass of the Martyrs. And they drowned out the funeral Mass so that the monks could not sing the funeral Mass for Thomas Becket. So therefore the bishop that was doing the funeral, he took off the black vestments, and they took away the Requiem cards, and took away the Requiem books, and they sang the Mass of the Martyr. And Alexander III, 2 years later, canonized him as saint. He's one of the first saints to actually be canonized in the canonization process. Who died in 1170 AD. He was canonized in 1173. And the very king that brought about his death had to go to the Canterbury Cathedral and he had to kneel down and do penance. And he had to say that I didn't really cause the death of the king, which is probably a lie. He said, will no one rid me of this meddlesome priest? But the angels sing his Mass because he was a bishop. And it says he was constant. He stood for the rights of God. He did not bend before the king. He loved the souls, the sheep that were under his care. And his last prayer was, as he was in his own church, he said, kill me, but do not harm any of these ones. Just like our Lord Jesus Christ rejoiced as he went to the crucifixion. And he said, I thank thee, Lord, that thou hast heard me. For not one of those who was near him was harmed. The 11 apostles inside the garden ran away. They were so scared, but they were not in the slightest danger. And St. Thomas Becket would not allow that any of his sheep die. He died in their stead. And as we read during his Mass, I am the good shepherd. And the shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. And St. John Chrysostom says, all right, who is the good shepherd? Now, not every shepherd will be allowed to die the martyrdom death. But every shepherd must be ready to die the martyrdom death. And who is the one that's ready to die? Who really is the good shepherd? Because our Lord Jesus Christ became man, and he could not become man to live. He only became man to die. As Father Giselle used to say in his sermons early on in the Resistance, that the first popes were ordinary popes. The first bishops were ordinary bishops. Because every single priest back in the year back in the year 37, and the year 137 and 237 and 300, every single priest who was consecrated a bishop knew he would be martyred before he got consecrated. Every pope who was elected knew that his last day would be the day in which he would die in the hands of the emperor's wicked soldiers. They all knew they would not die natural deaths. You want to become a priest? They were like the soldiers, like the one soldier in the story of the Black Hawk Down, the two soldiers story of the Black Hawk Down in 1993. There were soldiers on the ground. They were surrounded by thousands and thousands and thousands of Sudanese, and they were going to die. Two men said, "Permission to descend, sir. Permission to descend." They will descend, and they will fight, and they will keep them alive for a couple of hours, and then they will die. They will not live. They will not return home. And it was a normal bishop. When you become a bishop, the idea is supposed to be permission to descend, sir. Permission to go out onto the battlefield, sir, in order to die. The good shepherd dies for his sheep. How many good shepherds are there in the church down the last 2,000 years? What does it say in the book of Ezekiel? Woe to the shepherds. What does St. John Chrysostom say to the shepherds in the New Testament? Woe to the shepherds. And he also said, how many shepherds are wolves? The actual wicked, satanic infiltrators of the church, there are always very few. Even today, out of 7,000 bishops, how many of them are actually wolves? The actual leaders of the modernism, the actual leaders of the wickedness, maybe a few hundred out of 7,000. How many are thieves? The majority. How many are hirelings? The good ones. 250 bishops said, we will not tolerate this Vatican II. 5,000 priests in Spain said, we will not tolerate this new Mass you're going to give us in 1969. It is 1968, and 5,000 priests. A great number of the priests in Spain said, we will not tolerate this new Mass. And the new Mass came in 69, and all 5,000 said it. All of them, not one exception. And the 250 bishops, the good bishops, these bishops said, we will not accept modernism. We won't accept this change of faith. We won't accept your change of the liturgy. We're going to hold the tradition of our fathers. And then the iron fist of Paul VI came down upon them, and one bishop stood up. Only one. And his name was Marcel Lefebvre. Later on, a second bishop joined him, Antonio de Castromayor. But he did not join him in the beginning. Bishop de Castromayor went along. 11 years later, he joined the Archbishop in 1981. But in 1970, he did not. And so many bishops said, we support what you're doing, Marcel. We support what you're doing, but we can't do that. Because we are hirelings, because we can't lose our pensions, because we can't lose our episcopal houses, because we can't do the good if we're excommunicated like we can if we're inside the diocese. I mean, the reason, when the diocese, you can do so much more good. But what are the bishops condemned by St. John Chrysostom? The wolf. And it applies also to priests, but in a lesser level. The wolf, the thief, and the hireling. And what is the good shepherd? He is the one that will lay down his life for his sheep, who puts the sheep below him and the God above him as more important than himself. He will die for the rights of God. He will stand for the rights of God. He will be an ambassador of the rights of God. And that's the long part of his stick by which he whacks the enemies of God. Those are the sharp points of the horns of his mitre by which he is fearsome to the enemies of the truth. But then there is a hook on his stick called the staff of the crozier. And this is to pull the sheep out of the pits. And when the sheep see the shepherd, they are comforted. They know their shepherd, and the shepherd knows them. And when the wolf sees the shepherd, he's terrified. And when Satan sees the shepherd, he flees down to the bottommost part of hell. The trouble we have today is there are not shepherds, either secondary shepherds in the priesthood or primary shepherds in the episcopacy, who are doing the work of God. Everyone thinks they're good. We all think we're good. But God alone knows who is the one that is ready to die for his sheep. And St. Augustine says this can't happen without supernatural gift and grace of God. And this grace is supplied when the prayers of the faithful are there. When the faithful pray for the shepherd that he might be a good shepherd. Because without the protection and prayers of the faithful, without the sacrifices of others, without strong supernatural influence, that's why we as Catholics throughout the whole world have to pray for the shepherd who is in Rome. We have to pray that he repent. We have to pray that he return to God. We have to pray that he obey the Blessed Virgin Mary and the simple request that was made of him, that Pope Francis was consecrated Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. We pray for these things. But he can't do it without our prayers. He can't do it without our sacrifices and without our desire that it be done and that he obey heaven. And one day God will give the Bishop of Rome, Pope Francis, he will give him the grace, and if not him, a successor, to actually obey heaven and go from a wicked shepherd, a wolf if he is a wolf, or a thief if he is a thief, or a hireling if he is a hireling, to a good shepherd. God bless you all. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Amen.